Hello, everyone. This is Yemi Yarunsi. Some people call me Yummy, 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 Yummy. Well, welcome to All Alike Onto Him podcast, where we explore the human connection, faith, hope, and the human spirit of togetherness. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the All Alike Onto Him podcast. Your host here, Yemi Yarunsi. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Thomas Appiah. Dr. Appiah, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
It's such a delight to be with you, and I just love the title that you've got. It says, All Are Like Unto Him.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a quick book that I wrote recently. It's called I Am a Mailbox.
Mm.
Regardless of where your mailbox sits, the mailman will treat it with the same regards, will deliver the mail, and the mail will stay in your mailbox, and you'll pick up your mailbox. Your purpose is the same. So anyway, later I'll share with you a little bit about this book and the journey that I took in taking pictures of different mailboxes across the globe and how that resonates with me. All are like unto him, just like the mailbox to the mailman.
Oh, well, I'm excited to hear that. I am really excited. I can't tell you how much I'm excited for this conversation here. Really touches on really what this this podcast is all about. And for this episode, I really want to talk about the church and the genesis of the church in Ghana. As you all know, this podcast is designed to highlight and exemplify and amplify the stories of pioneers of the church outside of the United States, the continental United States, and really dig deep into the pioneers in Africa and other parts of the world, and highlight these. I don't want to say forgotten stories, but I think really like these stories are not being said enough and highlighted across the community. And speaking of Ghana, and the last episode that we had about the church in Nigeria, and really how we talked about Anthony Obina. And the scores of, after Elder Maybe and Elder Cannon had baptized Anthony Obina in Nigeria, and the scores of new members in Nigeria, Elder Maybe left to Ghana, and he met with a few individuals that were adamant and really had really strong testimonies of the church. Brother Asai, Frank Mensah, Clement Oskere, and J.W.B. Johnson, otherwise known as Billy Johnson as well. And just like in Nigeria, there were unofficial congregations of the church in Ghana. As a matter of fact, Billy Johnson, J.W.B. Johnson, was the leader of multiple different congregations in Ghana. And Elder Maybe and Elder Cannon visited some of these congregations, and they were in one instance, there was about 100 people present for the meeting, and really that showed the eagerness and the drive to learn more about the church, or really to the drive of the testimony of the saints in Africa. Elder Maybe penned in his diary at the time, and he said, and I quote, "I learned that all the other 9 branches contained people of strong testimony, much like those of Cape Coast." I think the first one they attended was the one in Cape Coast, and he was emphasizing the other 9 congregations. They too were waiting. That was the quote that he mentioned. And many of them are eagerly prepared to receive the gospel. I feel certain you will baptize 1,000 or more. And that was a quote that was that was said to Elder Maybe at the time. Here is also an exchange that I thought really exemplified the faith of the Ghanaian saints right there in Ghana. J.W.B. Billy Johnson was a paid minister at the time who received a livelihood, and this was documented by Elder Maybe, who received a livelihood through donations from members. And Elder Maybe in his diary mentioned that he informed him that, within the true Church of Jesus Christ, we have no paid ministry. And Johnson replied saying, one of the questions Elder Maybe asked him was, how will you survive if the Lord calls you to such a position in the true church? And Brother Johnson mentioned and replied, he said, I plan to acquire a farm with my brother and give all the surplus to the church. As a matter of fact, in anticipation of the missionaries' arrival, members of the congregation had even raised a bunch of money for a building fund in only a month. The faith and spirit of sacrifice was present in Ghana. And this really almost drove Elder Maybe to tears, and he penned that in his diary, saying that right here in front of him, this individual was willing to give it all for the church, for his testimony. That was very, very inspiring conversation or conversation or interaction that I really touched on that really stuck out for me. Subsequently, at about 4 p.m. on that one of the days, they gathered at the beach in Ghana with 89 prospective members. Men, women, and children were assembled, all clad in white, awaiting their rendezvous with eternity. Elder Cannon entered the water first, extending his hand to Abraham Frank Mensah, and thus the first baptism in Ghana occurred. And here is another excerpt from Elder Maybe's diary. Brother Mensah arose from the ocean glowing, the water dripping and shimmering from his dark hair, and for a moment, despite their marked differences in skin color, Elder Cannon and our new convert looked very much alike in their brotherhood and rejoicing. It was an appropriate first because Frank Mensah had very possibly been the first man to organize a so-called LDS church in the land of Ghana. Subsequently, later on, Elder Faust arrived to visit, and in his address to the congregation, he had this quote: "One day there will be a temple in Africa." And today, obviously, there are multiple temples in Africa. What a insightful revelation at the point. And really, how do you make that confirmation when you're just starting out with, the first baptism, and now you're making that, confirmation that one day there will be a temple in Africa? I think that showed the foresight and knowing that the testimony of the church, of those individuals there, was very strong, and knowing that it was going to drive through ultimately to expand membership and multiple testimonies in Africa. So that is one of the amazing stories of the pioneers, or at least from that perspective in Ghana. And Dr. Appiah, I know you're here. I know you're from Ghana, but I just want to just introduce you. Who is Dr. Appiah, just for the guests who don't know who you are?
Well, so in a way, I simply define myself as one that is looking to do good and to help all become their very best self. Okay. I grew up in Ghana, as you'd mentioned, and in 1978, 79, my dad was visiting United States in Quincy, Illinois, and that's very close to Nauvoo. And, during that time, he had someone that was taking them around the area. He had come to purchase transmitter equipment for the country of Ghana. And on their last day of departure, Brother Peterson, who was working at Harris Corporation at that time, invited my dad to attend church with him. And he did go to church with him. And someone was giving a talk about the fact that there are so many of us walking through this life with our lights off, not knowing exactly where we're going. And that resonated with my dad for some reason. And so he wanted to know more about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Well, obviously, the church was not formally recognized in Ghana at that time, but 1978, it was then recognized. He returned to Ghana, and his name was given to the church missionary department. It was the missionary department, the International Missionary Department. And for 3 years, they kept looking for us to, visit with us. But when he had arrived in Ghana, because a lot of the members didn't know of the existence of the church in the U.S., someone actually was able to approach him because they saw that he had a copy of the Book of Mormon, and invited him to just go and speak to the small congregation, telling them that indeed there is a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in America. And then from that point on, of course, he was busy installing all this transmitting equipment that he had but for the country. So we were never at home. I was at boarding school, or my brothers were also in boarding school and things like that. But one very special day, Billy Johnson, Sylvester Cooper, Emmanuel Kissy, all of them showed up at our door with another full-time missionary, Elder and Sister Williams. And that day was in, I think it was somewhere in March of 1983 when they came to the house to visit. So meanwhile, the church has been in the country for less than 5 years, which I can tell you a little bit about my experience with Billy Johnson.
Yeah, please, I'd love to. Yes, absolutely.
So I'll pause for a moment and fast forward all the way to BYU, and I'll go back and talk about that. But I'm at the MTC teaching missionaries, and there's a senior couple that approaches me, and I'm teaching the senior couple. And they said, when I was a young missionary, we gave a copy of the Book of Mormon to my cousin, and living in that home was a lady from Ghana. Well, that lady was the one that gave that Book of Mormon that eventually ended up in Billy Johnson's hand. So the whole world was coming together in that story. But anyway, so that's my story about how we came about, or coming to know about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was through my dad's visit to Quincy, meeting Brother Peterson, and then him coming to Ghana. Brother Johnson and the rest came to the home, taught us the gospel, and eventually we got baptized sometime in May of 1983.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that is the connection is uncanny. Just how all these things are interrelated, and just trying to map the connections of how all these things happened. Going back, taking what he had learned and taking it back to Ghana. I think one of the things that just struck me was, obviously the in 1978 you mentioned, sometimes in today and popular culture today, when we, we go on the internet or we go on social media and we see the detractors of the church, one of the things that they say is that they look at, Africans or maybe Black Americans or Black people in general, and they try to portray this image that, back then the members of the church were all did not like Black people, or, they were hesitant. They didn't want Black members and things of that. But we just hear the story about how, he was invited to the church at that period of time, and how, and people don't know about these stories. They just hear, anecdotes or random stories about, about the church or whatever it may be, and they come to conclusions, but they don't understand that the church is truly a loving church. This is one of the greatest communities that I've ever been a part of in my life. I had, I was converted to the church at a later stage in my life, and I have never been part of any community for me, individually, like as great as it is. I have been in DC for the past, month or two, and my wife has been home all by herself with our little kid, and our neighbors who are also members of our congregation, just the way that they have leaned in, and I'm not saying only church members are good people, but I think something about the community is that it's a very loving community, and it's very welcoming, and I really, the detractors of the church, sometimes I really wish they could see in first person what the church is truly all about. It's a loving church and welcoming church as well, and sometimes people just are
So I have this principle of really using words that invites people to come and see. The word detractors seems a little bit strong for me, because whatever they are sharing with you is their experience. And what they know at that time is all that they know. Until they come to a point where they know something different, all they know is what they know. You know, in part of my doctorate studies, I looked at what we call the implicit bias and also let's call it two things. There's transgression and there's sin. Okay. Sometimes we just follow what our forefathers have done without knowing what we are doing. That I'll put it as transgression. Sin is knowing exactly what you are doing and blatantly continuing to do it in a way of either dislike, discrimination, or anything that does not invite people to reach their greatest potential. So let's put detractors. But, there are people in the LDS church that still feel lonely, even among all these people that they sit in congregations. That happens. And that can be magnified and amplified and become a stumbling block. Okay. What I invite all is to look, all are alike unto him, is to look very closely into our own selves and say, what am I doing? It's my behavior, a way that invites others to be their very best? Or am I looking to discriminate because this person doesn't wear the same type of clothing, is not as beautiful as I am, doesn't have the same cloud of groups? Let me talk about another phrase or point that is very interesting. I was talking to Boyd Matheson on my radio show, which we broadcast every Thursday to Ghana to teach leadership, talking about citizens taking responsibility, CTR. Okay, could sound like choose the right. All right. And Boyd was talking to me and said, to really have a holy relationship with one another, HOL, holy relationship with one another, we need to bring ourselves wholly, WHOL, into the conversation. Have you been to a meeting where you are talking to someone, but they are actually looking around to see if there's somebody else that is more important that they want to go and visit with? That is not holy. Okay? To be holy with your relationship is to be present wholly and make the person that you are interacting with as the most important person ever. They will sense it. They will sense your goodness. But when we pretend and do not allow ourselves to be wholly present when we are even among our own congregation members, it can cause rifts. It can cause people to feel like they do not matter, that we do not care for them. And perhaps that's what some people have experienced who were not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, living in a community where they did not feel included. So I'm very sensitive to that. And I talk about that in more broad sense. Let us be very inclusive, all are alike unto him, in a way that makes them feel that we care about them and that it's not transactional, that our relationship with them, it's a way that will bring transformation, that they can become. Who? The one that we all worship.
No, wow. Thank you for that insight. And really, I'd love to touch on that actually, because I think one of the things that I constantly try to understand more is the difference between culture and doctrine, right? And how that can be distinguished, right? Or does the doctrine foster the culture, right? Does the doctrine of the church foster the culture of the church, or is it just culture and doctrine are completely different, completely uniquely independent? Because like the culture of the church is, we wear, typically speaking, at least generally speaking, coming with your best dress, your Sunday dress, you come in your white shirt, whatever, you come into your sacrament meeting. Like there was one day I came in without a tie, for instance, and I just felt out of place. I couldn't even be at rest because I kept thinking about, oh, who's looking at me or who's doing what, and I couldn't even be reverent in the chapel, like during sacrament, because I was so worried about that. So I guess, like, I'm sort of asking that question. What are your thoughts on that, right?
That's a powerful question. And I answer it in multiple ways, but I will focus on one thing. Come as you are. If you can go into a situation and go as you are and feel accepted, then you're among saints. Yes, all these cultures can permeate and become part of the doctrine. Who said you have to wear a tie to go to heaven?
Yeah.
Oh, think about the people that live in different parts of the world that do not wear ties.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable for such a person to come to church? See, we are all sinners working towards being sent. And so what you shared with me, it's real, where peer pressure, culture detracts from the real message.
Yeah.
What I pray and ask people to do for themselves is to know exactly who they are. Come to understand yourself, who you are. You are a child of God. You have self-worth. Your self-worth is not determined by where you sit in the pew or what you wear. You are divinely created, and your purpose is the same. And then with that understanding, you can walk through life with peace. When you can come to that peace, then whether you wear a tie, whether you're, you wear a dark shirt or a white shirt, doesn't matter. However, there are protocols or processes that sometimes take place. For example, if I'm going to a swimming pool, I will not put on my suit and tie to go to swim. I'll put on something that is appropriate for swimming. But if I'm having a wedding and we want to all jump in the swimming pool with my suit and tie as part of the celebration, so be it. Okay. But those are the little things that we need to really work out and make sure that in all that we do, we first recognize who we are and what we stand for. Any judgment will be just like the Pharisees and the Sadducees who looked at Jesus Christ and said, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Isn't that the carpenter's son? Yeah. How is he able to speak and talk to us in that way? Dismissing the message that he's got, but more concerned about the tradition of where he originated. So it is so true, and you shared your truth. I mean, I've worn beard and gone to church. Yeah. Have I felt like the apostles are not wearing beards, so why am I wearing a beard? No. Okay. Yeah. That's the protocol. There's so many things that we do that perhaps might detract from real spirituality. Having a long hair doesn't mean that you are not living the word. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. The next thing that comes to my mind is, we talked about how, the church the church and the genesis of the church in Nigeria and in Ghana, and these members or these individuals, like Billy Johnson and Mensa, Brother Mensa, they knew what I didn't see literature, but I'm assuming they knew that there was a ban, there was priesthood ban, right? Of not, because I'm sure when they were writing the letters, and they were getting the letters back from Salt Lake City saying that there are no plans to establish the church in Black Africa. Why do you think they kept going through with it, right? Even after getting quote unquote like denials, right, or the no's, right? Why did they keep going and trying to get the church in Africa and Ghana?
Very powerful question, and I guess I will have to relate to myself because I'm also Black, and I learned about the priesthood being, denied of people of African descent, and I looked at whoever told me that. I said, "How dare them? Mm-hmm. What they think they are? Mm-hmm. I'm a good person. Yeah. I'm a child of God. I know my self-worth." Okay, but things happen in this life that I or no one can explain. How that ban came to be, I don't know. But I don't believe that Heavenly Father will be discriminatory in the way that he sees his children, because it says all are alike unto him. Yeah. Black or white, male or female, born or free. Now, if that is the truth, then how could that be a point of denial of the priesthood? So we live in societies, and each society has certain things that happen to them. I mean, the Constitution of the United States even started from a point where a person of African descent was not considered as a full human being. Yeah. And we now know that that's not a true statement. Mm-hmm. Whoever did the study knows that we are all human beings. Yeah. We breathe, we have blood, we have all the organs necessary to move forward. But one should ask himself, why would anyone put that in a constitution and later have it ratified? Or thinking that females could not vote. Mm-hmm. And why was that in the Constitution and later ratified? So I will give you my phrase, and you can quote me on this. What you know is what you know. Right now, what I know is just this moment, which is absolute, that I am here, sitting here with you. Okay. And then our knowledge grows, and we come to know more. Mm-hmm. And as we allow ourselves to know more, we change. I'll give you an example from the scriptures. Paul. Paul is a great guy. I love Paul. But before he became Paul, he was Saul. He was so convinced that it was necessary that Stephen be stoned to death. So he stood and carried the clothes of people that were stoning Stephen, who was a follower of Christ. He was certain. He was absolute. But then, when his eyes open, he changes ways. So we are not perfect in any means. We sometimes will let the tradition of our fathers, which I call the transgression, and then the sins, which I call blatant discrimination or really doing things to hurt someone. Paul or Saul was a transgression. Yeah. He had followed the tradition. But then when he came to know the Savior, he changed. And he even wrote, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, and I've put away childish things. What you know is what you know.
Woo. Yeah, that's a good quote. I'm actually gonna take that. I love that. I love that perspective because we have as humans, and I think that's what makes us humans, and we have to realize that we're striving for perfection, right? We're striving to get there, but we're not, and we have to be able to give each other grace, right? In the different things that we do, right? But when it becomes pervasive and when it becomes intentional to hurt someone, then that's different. Like that's sin, right? You're intentionally, doing what's wrong, right? And all that. So,
but so let me go back and answer the other question. Why would Billy Johnson and the rest continue on faithfully as they wrote letters and, President Harold Billy, David O. McKay, they all sent letters saying the time is not yet, but it will come. Because they had felt something. They knew what they had felt at that time, and that drove them to continue on. And such experiences is what leads us to come to that conviction, that we come to know certain things at the time that we know it, and we continue and backs in that joy because of the peace and joy that we receive. So that's what I would say. But there's so many faithful individuals that supported Billy Johnson in this journey.
Yeah.
I got baptized, and I was actually ordained a priest by Billy Johnson when I got baptized, and we were baptized in an ocean. Same place that
Yes.
Brother maybe was talking about, people standing in line.
Yeah, so I heard, and when I was reading, and maybe I could be wrong, but they said the name of the place was Amuokofo. Is that the name of the place?
Say that again.
Amuokofo.
Amuokofo.
Yeah, is that the name of the?
What is the name? Oh my goodness! Now my mind has gone blank on that.
And yeah, and it's fine. I'll look. I'll make sure I check it out again, and I'll put it on the screen or something. But yeah, no, that's fine.
But that place, my dad was actually the stake president, and he and President Woodruff at that time have gone to the same place. I can hear the name coming to my mind, and I can't pronounce it yet. Okay, and they are going to have a monument over there to preserve that location as a historic site. So
yes, please. I hope that should happen, and I want to definitely read more about that. I'd love to see it. There's an excerpt as well from a letter that Billy Johnson, who at the time, after he had been baptized, he was a branch president in Cape Coast, and he sent this letter to the church and to Elder Maybe, and he said, "Since you left us," and this was after the baptisms had occurred. I said, "Since you left us, we have been very serious with the teachings of the doctrines of the church. We have extended the teaching program to Fosu, Manso, Accra, Nkamfoa,
yes,
Nchaban. Is that Nchaban or something? Nchaban. I don't know. It's a location, but he said, during my visits to these places, I realized that the people there have a growing interest in the doctrine of the church and are also getting ready for baptisms." I think just touching on what you said too is that there was people had that feeling within themselves, and it's a testament to when something is right, like you know it within your heart, right? And and that compass drives you, takes you there. So
before I actually joined the church, we lived in a place called Kisi, which was about 22 miles away from Cape Coast. Okay. And there was none of the branches there. So we actually started a small group. But prior to me joining the church, we went to Cape Coast to visit the branch over there. And by the way, they didn't have a church building. It was a place where they store cocoa, and they traded the cocoa, and then on the weekend, we would go over and sweep the place, set up chairs. In fact, the roof had holes in it. It was a tin roof, had holes. And this particular day that I went, it started raining. It was raining during sacrament meeting. And we started moving the chairs out under the holes and the rain that was coming. But then the branch president, his name was Datsun, he stood up and announced to the congregation, I would like 3 brethren to come up and pray and command the rain to stop. Hear me? Think about this. You're sitting in a congregation, it's raining, and the branch president stands up and invites 3 men with priesthood to come up and pray to stop the rain. Here I was, a 19-year-old guy, coming to this church and not even baptized, and I was fascinated. I wanted to know, okay, let's see what happens. So the first brother went up, prayed. The second brother went up, prayed. The third brother went up, and when he said amen, the rain stopped, and there were rays of sun shining in the room. So you might ask the question again, what caused these 3 brethren to stand up under the command of their branch president to go up and pray? They had faith.
Faith, yeah.
So I witnessed that miracle on that day. Now, I say this in a sense that when the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints move into new places, miracles happen. I saw a lot of them. I saw a lot of transformational events that cause people to stay on, such that the story of holding the priesthood away from them didn't mean much, because now they have it and it works. The reasons for holding it didn't mean much, because we know God would not give such a revelation in my mind, because we are all alike unto God. Okay, so what you know is what you know. And sometimes these transgressions or sins or traditions of our fathers continue to permeate in our thinking and our behaviors. But we are all sinners working to become saints. And the church is one of the vehicles that helps us in that process.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That is very insightful. And I think that really helps me phrase this better. One of the things that I found intriguing too, I went online and I looked at the, there's a thing that the church put out about the 30 countries with the most Latter-day Saints.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of ranks, kind of uses by population size. And no argument here. Number one, the United States, and this was published in 2024, has about 6.9 million members. And then coming in at number 10, so really the first African country, Nigeria, which is about 230,000 members. And then in Ghana, coming in at 24 with about 106,000 active members as well. And just looking at the growth of the church in in these places, right? In Ghana, in Nigeria, the temples. Even just recently, previous conference, there's another temple being built in Nigeria, and just whoa, I can't imagine. Back in 1978, we're talking about members in just in the hundreds.
Yes.
And now we're just the growth of the church in these countries in Black Africa. I can't help but be stand amazed and really be thankful about the growth of the church. And one of the things that I read, there was this literature that someone had published, and I'll put I'm not going to mention, I can't quite remember who did it, but they were talking about about the genesis of the church in Black Africa, and they were talking about Anthony Obina in Nigeria, and they mentioned that, well, Anthony Obina, one of the reasons why they think he decided to reach out to the church was because a lot of the saints and people in Africa at the time wanted charity from the church, right? That's the reason why they wanted money from them, and that's why they were reaching out to the church. And really, I just even look back to the quote here by
maybe,
but yeah, by maybe talking about Brother Johnson, and he's saying, like, I'm gonna start my business, and my surplus, I'm gonna give it to the church. It's not what the church, what can I do for the church? How can I help grow the church here without any, there's no financial incentive. It's a these are lay leaders, right? Non-paid positions. And, the church wasn't building schools or anything like that, right? So this was really based on that purpose and faith from these individuals, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, if we were looking for help, why would someone spend time, and I spent all my Saturdays after I became a member of the church, going around with missionaries doing translation for them on my own dime. Okay. I will walk, when there were no vehicles around, about 6 or 7 miles to the closest branch to participate. And no one paid me for any of that. Now, when I was in high school, we didn't have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the town that I was in. So I called the mission president and said, can I start a small group? And he made me a group leader, gave me the sacramental tray, and I will teach the Sunday school, give the talk, pass the sacrament, and everything. Today, ask me how many people are in that location. They have an entire stake.
Ooh.
Okay. So when I left school, my brother was the group leader, and it's an entire stake. So we did not do the work because we thought we were getting remuneration. There was such love for the message, the love of families being together. When you entered the building on Sunday, every Sunday was jubilation. And then during the week, if you were to see a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from your congregation in public, you thought you had another reunion. There was a joy of seeing another member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We did not ignore them when we were walking through the gas station or the grocery store, or the hospital or the school. We felt that we were one. We made each other feel welcome. Even today, the people that I home taught them still recognize me as their home teacher since 1984, 85, 86. We are still connected. Ministering to someone, it's not a chore. We feel that when we minister to someone, we have become part of their family. And we don't do it just because it's an assignment. We do it because we love the people and want to give them the time. There's a saying in Africa that in Africa we have no watches, but we have time. We make time for people, hence making our relationship holy because we present ourselves holy when we are with one another.
Oh, amen. Oh, thank you. And as we are kind of getting to the end of here, I wanted to just ask you, as someone that's been in Utah, and since you've been in Utah, and I know that the demographics has changed. There's a growth of African, people of African descent, Africans, African immigrants in Utah. Since you first moved to Utah, how have you seen that change in the population of Africans in Utah? I know it's still not a hugely significant number, but there is growth, right?
At least I would say there's the awareness that there are other race than just white.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people of African descent in Utah, the population has grown.
Yeah.
1990, when I was at BYU, we had nothing more than, maybe 20, 30, African Americans walking around. We formed the Africa Student Union, International Student Union. We went to the Capitol. We met Governor Bangada to sign things of recognizing the Martin Luther King Day and all sorts of other things, Now, I feel like the population has grown. I have 4 children. That adds to the to the number, and then now 3 grandchildren. That also adds to the number. But I'll just share one experience. I was in my ward in Provo, and I had just been called to serve in the bishopric. And I'm standing there talking to a friend, and a young kid came to me and licked me.
Oh.
And looked at the dad with such a disappointment.
I can see where this is going.
And I just laughed it off. And now we are very good friends. But because they refer to a person of color as the chocolate man. And this young kid came to taste the chocolate. Very disappointed that it was all sweaty hands and whatnot. Okay. But that happened to me. And, sometimes you laugh after about these things, but as parents, as we work to integrate one another, let us be open. Let us, because when certain things happen in life, it almost serves as a marker in our mind, and that's where we go to.
Yeah.
So perhaps you've read in the Book of Mormon that there was a curse on the Lamanites, and therefore all you think about is this curse. And you don't teach it in a way that helps your children to understand that we are all alike unto God. So that's one thing that I would say as parents, let's be very clear. We are all the same. We have self-worth. Why some are black and some are white and yellow and green with different colors of hair and whatnot, it's a complexity that I cannot explain. But what I can say and what I know, and this is what I know, is that we all have self-worth and we have the potential to excel, achieve, and reach our greatest height. Hence, I'm a mailbox.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to just sort of the last 2 questions I have. I always ask every guest here if there is a favorite scripture that they have and what that means, to you. and really to individuals, other African Americans or Africans, Black, whatever it is, and they hear about the priesthood ban. I know you've touched on it, but what would be your message to those individuals who, okay, I've heard about this thing that happened way back in the past, so I'm hesitant to listen to the gospel or to know more about the church because there was this priesthood ban in the past. What would you say to those individuals who are sort of questioning, or even those who are currently members of the church and are questioning because maybe now they're learning more about the ban?
This is a very complex subject. Again, I did touch on it.
Mm-hmm.
In my view, if anybody were trying to explain to me why the ban, I would say, stop. You don't know. There's no way, in my view, that Heavenly Father, who is loving and kind, who has said in multiple times, all are like unto him, will put a restriction of such sacred nature on any group of people. Okay? So, was a mistake? Somebody was just following old traditions? I can't even attempt to explain it. But what I can say is that a recognition was made,
Yeah.
and the priesthood was given. Whether it came through pressure, whether it came through boycotts, whether it came through whatever it is. If the protocol was for a prophet to study and come to a point to say, now I have enough information, this is not the right way we should move, so I am making a change, then so be it. Now, I speak boldly on this in the sense that in all my studies, I cannot find where or how a loving God, a Father in heaven, would discriminate among his own children, as people didn't know that we, people of African descent, are also 100% people, and not 1/3. Okay. So here's that challenge. Each person has to find their own truth. And my truth is that I have used it, it works.
Yeah.
And that is sufficient for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Appiah. Thank you for that. I think a lot of people would greatly benefit from your perspective, and I do as well. And there was a time where it came to me when I was investigating the church, and I realized, like, look, I was building my testimony. I knew I just used my internal compass and what I was feeling at the time to make my decision, and I knew this was the true church. I knew the church presented me with things that made me a better person, and I had that internal revelation for myself, right? And that's,
And I think that internal revelation gave you peace.
yes.
And at any point in our investigation, the invitation is that test it out, find out for yourself. Because you go to the last, chapter of the Book of Mormon in Moroni, the invitation is there. And anything that we do, even with science, see, and I'm being a little philosophical here based on my own little understanding, anything that is dogmatic, I'm very concerned about. Because as we come to know more, what we thought was absolute, it's no longer absolute. Now, there are principles that can be used, but even within those principles, application thereof expands. Who thought we could have an AI?
Yeah.
You know, even people that started doing computers never thought that a personal computer will be possible. Who thought we could fly?
Yeah.
Who thought we could overcome gravity and go into space? Not everything that goes up comes down, which is a simple phrase that people talk about.
Yeah.
But we've come to know certain things. And these are all principles that can be expanded. And we need not be dogmatic in the way we think. Even in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I've seen multiple changes come about. But if I were a dogmatic person, I would just say, why was the change?
Mm-hmm.
Why should there be a change?
Yeah, great. I agree. I agree with that, actually. I really do. So is there any particular scripture? It doesn't have to be, specific, like the naming the verse and the chapter, but any particular scripture that really resonates with you that you'd love to share?
Yes, one that I like to share will be, he said, I am constantly evaluating myself to see where I stand. And in the Book of Mormon, you go to chapter 5 of Alma. I like to review it monthly. And there are certain questions that will trigger for you to just censor yourself. I don't need anybody to tell me where I am, whether I'm spiritually being born again, or I can stand blameless before God at the last day. I have to evaluate it myself. And then with that evaluation, I make corrective changes, which is what I will say, staying on the covenant path. We talk about that, but what guides you in staying on the covenant path? It's not just mechanics. We need to reflect on our own lives. That reflection is what helps me to stay rooted, established, and grounded in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So Alma chapter 5 is great. Of course, I also look at 2nd Nephi chapter 4, the Psalm of Nephi. Because with all the great things that I've seen, why does sin so easily beset me? If I thought I was perfect, I should be translated. No, I'm not working on perfection. I'm working on becoming through progress. So those are the two scriptures that people can take, and I use that as well.
Oh, thank you. Oh man, I am truly blessed just listening to you and your perspectives. And there were a lot of things that I never looked at it in that way. I love the your thoughts on transgression and sin. I really love your insights here. Thank you so much. And I see that you do have a book. I'm very curious, and I want to I would love to read more. I love that concept of mailbox.
This is a small book for children. It's called I'm a Mailbox. It's just to help people have self-efficacy, to realize that their potential, their purpose is the same, and the mailman will treat them the same way. So I have a copy here, and I'm going to donate it to you.
Oh, thank you so much.
You can read it to your daughter.
Yeah, she would love it.
Okay.
She would absolutely love it.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And
thank you.
If people want to find copies of this, they can buy it on Amazon.
Okay.
It's on
great.
Amazon. Just type in I'm a Mailbox.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm going to read this to her today. She loves books, and I know she would love this one as well.
I'll have to sign it.
Yes,
sign
please.
it for you later.
Yeah, and I just want, as we close, I just wanted to say, number one, thank you so much for being here, and not just that as well. I think that just to the the African community here in Utah, the first time I heard about you was from, it was in a different arena, and someone, your name came up multiple times, and just kind of following what you were doing in the community. Everywhere I turned with, the African festival and the people that run that thing, and just your name coming up over and over again, and the path that you've paved for all of us here in Utah, is just, I want to thank you so much for what you do, because you are an absolute shining example for us, for the younger folks coming up in Utah. And I just want to thank you for all that you've done for the community. And you are, a pioneer. You are, heavy hitter in the community, and not just, in terms of how we need to model our, when we come here to, to America or to Utah, and really live our lives. So I just want to say thank you for being that shining example for us. And I'm really happy to know you, and really looking forward to many more years of mentorship as well.
You are too kind. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's been a delight to be here.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for listening in, and talk to you all later. Have a good one. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
To all my podcast listeners, I'm so glad you are here. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, like, and share.